My daughter has a master's in film and TV. So
Oh, sorry.
she'll edit it, I hope. Will you?
Okay, so where we are right now, this is called the Court Law Religion. And again, it symbolizes Paramahansa's commitment to that this is not one church, it's not about one belief system. So you have the symbol of Islam over there, you have the cross for Christianity, Buddhism, and the Om symbol for Hinduism. And you know, Brother Satyananda was telling me that he knew of a Catholic priest who found out about the value of Kriya Yoga, and he was initiated into meditating and you know, bringing the value of this back into his ministry. And so I think that's one of the best things about this thing. It's like we're all one, okay? And it is not exclusionary, it is inclusive, okay? So the last stop is right down this way.
Gardenia. Like a garden, gardenia.
Okay, so this is the last saint, and as I said, I've been leading this tour for about 2 years, and only one person has gotten this over the last 2 years. Okay, so let's see if anyone here knows who this is.
It's a Jain, but I can't remember his name.
Okay.
He's the protector of snakes.
Oh, Vishnu?
No.
No, it's Jain Muni, I
Jain
think.
religion.
Muni.
No.
No?
Yes,
No. No. His name is Parsvanath. Parsvanath.
Parsvanath.
And you got it was from the Jain religion, Jain, which is an offshoot of Hinduism, from what I understand. I don't know a lot about Parsvanath, but he was one of Paramahansa's favorite saints, and like Saint Francis, he meditated and got in touch with who he is, and was a leader of the Jain religion back some 1,000 years before Christ. So that's Parsvanath. Okay.
Is that in India?
It's in India.
Yeah, India.
Right. Right.
South of like Hinduism.
So, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming. We're coming to an end of the talk, but there's a couple other things I wanted to kind of address. So, thank you for being here. You know, you could have been doing a lot of other things. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and you're here. You know, you're here. I wanted to ask some of you, if you're raised in the Catholic or religion, you believe in Santa Claus, okay, right? Do you remember, does anyone remember when and what the circumstances were when you found out that there wasn't a Santa Claus? What happened?
I found the box for my scooter.
Oh, you found, so then it kind of like popped the delusion that Santa Claus was there?
I don't think Santa Claus left the box out back.
Okay, that's great.
It was 5.
5.
Crushed me.
Anyone else have an experience like that?
My little niece, I mean, I think she was in the first grade, and all her classmates were telling her there's no Santa Claus, and she came to us, is that true? I'm like, I ain't saying nothing. Talk to your mom.
Talk to your mom. Like you said up there.
Right.
What about you?
I found out when I was 8 years old from the boy who just moved in across the street, and I was crushed.
Yeah.
Christmas was never the same again.
Yeah.
I
Never.
know, it's really a sad thing when your kids discover that.
Exactly.
It really is. You just feel like, oh,
Yeah.
life is really...
And that everyone had been telling me a story.
Yeah.
That just,
So I know
Illusion.
Good thing there's an Easter bunny.
that there's a what?
an Easter bunny.
No, absolutely. But when I know that when I was 3 years old, I was born on December 13th, and I had an older brother who was a year and a half older than me. So I, was all excited about Christmas coming. My dad would always read the night before Christmas, and it was just a great time. And so I was going to get the hot chocolate and put it at the chimney, and my brother took me aside and said, "Hey, there's no Santa Claus." And I went, "Oh, no, I believe most of what you've been telling me, but I think you're wrong on this one." Because my life was like 2 miles apart. My grandmother lived 2 miles away, and it's reasonable that Santa could have hit all those chimneys. So it made sense. But like you've experienced, that it's upsetting to hear the truth, but then it sets you free. So when you hear the truth, it first is upsetting, then it sets you free. Because once I got out of that delusion, then another possibility opened up. I mean, life is a lot bigger than I had thought. And that's the way life is. So here's Paramahansa, he comes across, and he's basically saying, you and me, we're living in a delusion. We think that something outside of us is going to make us happy. Ain't so. It's only within. You have to learn how to go within. And on our own, we don't do that. Without a guru, someone pointing to how to do it. And I've got techniques for you. But you have to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight. You actually have to kind of get into a spiritual family and find out how to do this. That's where the joy in life is. That's where being a saint becomes available to us. A couple of years ago, as a pathologist, one of the advantages of my work, and I don't know if you all know what a pathologist does, but we make diagnoses. I look in a microscope and find out if something's benign or malignant or whatever. And one day I was called into the CAT scan room, the CT room, and there was a patient on the gurney, and they were doing a CAT scan, and this patient had, his liver was filled with these little holes, and so it meant that we thought that he probably had a metastasis to the liver, or possibly the liver was malignant. So the radiologist is in there, and he sticks a needle into that, and then gives me this little snippet of tissue. I smear it, look at it stain it, and look at it under a microscope at the time he's doing the biopsy and tell him whether he's got an adequate amount of tissue. Then the next day I look at it again after it's fixed and it's on a slide, and then I can tell what it is. So that's my job as a pathologist. One of the great parts of being a pathologist is I don't have to have the conversation with the patient to tell him what it is. I'm spared that. I tell his doctor who sent him to the hospital. So on this occasion, I walk in the room, and the patient on the gurney is an orthopedic surgeon on our staff. I've never met him before, but I know who he is. So I go up and I introduce myself as he's, his name's Randy, and strange circumstance here, I'm gonna diagnose this thing. And so I looked at it, and it didn't look good on the first smear. And then the next day, I get this phone call, and it's Randy. Oh. He says, "Jim, what'd you find?" It's malignant, and I think it's probably coming from your pancreas, but I'm not sure yet. I have to do another special stain to determine that. And I was so uncomfortable having that conversation with him. And this is like on a Friday. And so then over the weekend, I'm here, and I was talking with this brother Achalananda, who's one of the monks. And I was telling him how uncomfortable it was to have that kind of a conversation with a patient. I'm unused to it. I mean, I give that information to a doctor who has that conversation. And it reminded me of Krishna telling Arjuna, who's complaining he doesn't want to fight, you've got to fight. You've got to be out there in life. And after the conversation with Brother Achalananda, I was kind of like empowered to, when Randy calls me up on Monday and asks me what it is, and I said, well, it's coming from your pancreas and it's to your liver. I'm basically giving him a death sentence, Because I've never seen anyone survive that kind of circumstance. And what's there in the conversation, why it's so uncomfortable, is there's no future other than leaving this body, okay? And we've all had it in some degree or another. And so out of that conversation with Brother Achananda, I was encouraged to open up a conversation with Randy. And I asked him, I said, have you ever meditated? And he said, well, I tried about 20 years ago, but I didn't stick with it. So then I start sharing with him about my experience here. And I said, have you ever heard of self-realization? He goes, you know, I live within a walking distance of self-realization. So I invited him to come the next week. So here he shows up, and he's there. His eyes are jaundiced, okay? He's 60 years old, handsome guy, and he's got his fiancée. He's never been married before. And there he is. And he was introduced to Paramahansa. And he came on a tour, just like you are. And he came every week. He came every week. One time he brought 10 of his high school buddies. He brought his parents, her parents, and we would talk after the service. And he'd come up to me, and I could tell that he was starting to get that it's delusional that this piece is going to stick around. We live in that delusion just like there's a Santa Claus. You know, it's kind of like, well, we don't even want to talk about it, but we're going to stick around for a while. Ain't so. It's upsetting. But once you get the reality and you start to kind of, the water starts to become clear, you start to create a future that's ours, that's always been there. But we don't see it. We are immortal. Our consciousness will live on after this piece goes away. So Randy kept on coming. One Sunday he came, and he says, I can't talk to you because I got so many ulcers in my mouth from the chemotherapy. And so we just looked at each other, and he just gave me a hug. It was just amazing. So last summer, he got married, and a month later he died. So he's no longer with us. But what an experience, you know? And for me to have passed up that opportunity, just giving them the information, would have been a missed opportunity. So that's what self-realization is about. It's a spiritual family that allows you to start opening up a spiritual bank account, to start clearing out the delusional cobwebs of unreality that we all live in. It's like taking that fish out of the water and saying, look, the water, notice your conversation. Notice you have something to say about it. Notice you can create heaven on earth. Don't wait. Don't wait. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come back. Come back.
We'll see the
Thank
video.
you very, very
Oh, you
much.
see the video.
Thank you so
You,
much.